It is whispered that out of all the living Astartes, none can surpass the devotion and unswerving loyalty to the Emperor than Helbrecht. He is High Marshal of the Black Templars, the chapter whose crusade endures eternal. The rise of Helbrecht is a path littered with the corpses of the enemies of the Imperium. With righteous fury he has slain, brutalized and destroyed all those who would stand against the will of the Emperor of mankind. One of his earliest distinctions was the Vinculius Crusade, in the year 833.M41. At the time, he remained a lowly neophyte, but this was soon to change. The crusade was led by High Marshal Ludulus, accompanied by a cadre of Sisters of Battle and the Inquisitor named Vinculius. As they descended upon the forces of the chaotic Death Cult, so did the legend of Helbrecht begin upon the blighted and war-torn world of Sepian IV. In single combat, Helbrecht slew a vile warp-spawn creature responsible for the corruption of the Hive World, and cast his broken body asunder. Following his deed of note, Helbrecht was inducted into the Sword Brethren to stand alongside the finest and most brutal warriors of the Black Templars. Decades passed, and Helbrecht found himself once more at the vanguard of another crusade, this time led by Marshal Dadians. Again he proved his mettle, with boundless courage and furious zeal, slaying innumerable enemies of man. Upon the death of Dadian, Helbrecht was assigned the rank of Marshal and assumed command of the crusade. Even the most ruthless and skilled warriors must taste defeat at least once in their lifetime, and for Helbrecht it was his confrontation with the Necron, Imhotep, the Stormlord. In the year 930.M41, the Necron Overlord descended on an Imperial ice world. The planet's defences could not match the wrath of Imhotep and his Necron underlings, but all was not lost. They could not prevent the astropathic choir calling for aid. The Black Templars answered, and with them marched Helbrecht. Quickly, they set about a counterstrike with the aim to drive the Xenos abominations from the planet, but the Necron Overlord was a seasoned and cunning warrior. No fool, Imhotep saw the actions of the Black Templars and arranged his forces in a formidable defence of his newly conquered world. Helbrecht led the assault against the Necron forces, his intentions to breach into the very heart of the Xenos armies and break their lines, to smash them from within. His plans were blunted as the opposition forces ambushed both orbital insurgent and Thunderhawk drop zones. The frozen plains echoed with the clamour of battle, as every Templar brandished faith and retribution. Explosions, carnage, blood, fire, and the icter of rage stained the ground. Scores of fallen Necron Templars littered the field of battle, but through it all, Helbrecht stalked Imhotep. Finally, they met in single combat, the Imperial steel clashing against the alien war scythe. Imhotep was clearly outmatched in terms of skill. Helbrecht's blade scored grievous blows time and again, but for each strike, the Therian's living necrodermis armor was quick to respond, repairing all damage in a matter of seconds. The combat drew on. Helbrecht battered his foe, but never seemed to manage a hit that would truly lay low his opponent. Eventually, even the stalwart Astartes collapsed, his body abused and broken by the ceaseless assault from the tireless Necron Lord. The duel over, Imhotep brought down his scythe. Helbrecht never wavered in his duty. He embraced his impending fate, roaring his anger and fury across the battlefield as he prepared to meet his end. However, death did not find him that day. The Necron Overlord's final strike severed his right wrist, claiming a hand and leaving him with the eternal reminder of their duel and his defeat. Marshal Helbrecht swore an oath of vengeance that day, not just against the Overlord for the dishonour of his loss, but against all Necrons. He vowed that upon the next facing of Imhotep, only one would leave the battlefield alive. The Marshal would soon get a chance to visit his oath of vengeance upon the Necron Overlord. In the year 985.M41, a Necron fleet was detected around the Imperial world of Davatas. Helbrecht saw this chance to bring death upon his most hated foe, and made all haste to intercept. Upon arriving in the sector, Helbrecht rejoiced as he came upon the enemy fleet. One of the ships was identified as Imhotep's personal flagship. Helbrecht quickly commanded his battle barge to engage, and in the darkness of the void, the lines met, and armaments roared their fire and fury. The Black Templar vessel, managed to land crippling blows against the Necron flagship. Its propulsive array was destroyed, stranding the Necron flagship, now a sitting target in the void. Helbrecht ordered an immediate boarding of the enemy ship. His revenge was close at hand. Emperor willing, he would see the Necron Lord dead and his oath fulfilled. Teleportation devices activated. Gunships harried and boarding torpedoes smashed into the Necron craft. The decks were rapidly swarming with Black Templars, and at the head of the furious assault was Helbrecht, leading his forces and purging any Xenos they encountered. Helbrecht finally came upon Imhotep, but satisfaction would be denied this day. Logic won over pride, and rather than fight, Imhotep teleported himself and many of his most valuable assets to some of the Necron escorts, ships that had yet to be engaged by the Black Templar fleet. Beating a swift retreat, the ships accelerated away from the fleet battle and made their escape into the void. Helbrecht bellowed with rage, his oath of vengeance unfulfilled. He could only derive scant satisfaction from the encounter, knowing at least that he had crushed the main bulk of the Necron forces. As a small consolation, he made sure the flagship of the Necron Overlord saw its end, setting it on a collision course with the nearest star. Renewing his oath of vengeance, Helbrecht swore that the next time he and Imhotep encountered each other, no matter what, he would see him dead by his own hand. Years passed, and in the year 990.M41, the High Marshal of the Black Templars, Cordhel, was slain by a frenzied Khorne berserker. The High Marshals assembled to select a successor to lead them. Helbrecht was elected to become the next High Marshal of the Black Templars. He was presented with his sign of office, the chapter's most sacred relic, the Sword of the High Marshals, a revered weapon said to contain the fragments of the blade of their Gene Father himself, Rogel Dawn. Sigismund, the first High Marshal, deemed it crucial that all High Marshals to come would carry the sword, so they would be forever reminded of their duty to the Imperium. Ascending to the rank of High Marshal, Helbrecht set about his labours, wasting little time before launching his first crusade against the cipher fiends of the Gaul Stars. This became known as the Gaul Stars Crusade. He led his forces into the desolate region of space, accounts recording the return of no previous Imperial expeditions. 8 long years passed. Within that time, the Xenos populations living among the outlying systems were purged, exterminated by the noble rancor of the Black Templars. The Crusade pushed onwards to the Xenos homeworld, arriving in the system without fanfare or opposition. They found the planets evacuated. No trace of inhabitants could be found. Helbrecht ordered an investigation to discover whether Xenos could have retreated, but this was soon interrupted as the fleet received a desperate call for aid. A distress call from the planet of Armageddon, imploring the Black Templars to provide assistance. The Orc warlord known as Ghazghkull Mad Uruk Fracker had returned with a huge war to besiege the Hive World. From the scant information that was available, it seemed the Orc fleet en route to the system was the biggest seen since the Ullanor Crusades. The third war for Armageddon was about to begin. Helbrecht rallied his chapter and 3 marshals, each leading a crusade of Templars, mustered to answer the Xenos threat. They departed from the chapter keeper Fergax, laying a swift course for the Segmentum Solar and the planet of Armageddon. The Black Templars were not the only fleets to lend aid against the Greenskin menace. Salamanders, Blood Angels and many more chapters loyal to the Emperor held orbit over the planet, waiting for the Orcs to arrive. Helbrecht assumed overall command of the Imperial and Astartes fleets. No one among them had greater experience in void warfare. He sent Marshals Rickard and Amric to the surface to wage war and crusade. Among those fearless warriors was the newly promoted High Chaplain, Grimaldis, specifically tasked with the defence of Hell's Reach. Soon enough, the Xenos launched their invasion. The skies above Armageddon were ravaged by void conflict. The Orcish vessels vastly outnumbered the assembled Imperial forces. The fighting was bitter and brutal, a mix of shipborne weaponry and visceral close combat. Helbrecht was always at the head of the assault, leading many boarding actions to breach the crude greenskin hulks, and with a furious hatred for the beast fueling his carnage, he managed to leverage a crippling blow to the invasion. The orcs on the surface were denied their much needed reinforcements, and the war began to suffer for it. Gradually losing momentum, the Marshals, with the assistance of other planet-side Imperial forces, began to stay and indeed turn aside the green tide. A space hulk believed to be occupied by Ghazghkull himself was sighted retreating from the void engagements. Helbrecht saw this as an opportunity to see the Orc Chieftain ended once and for all. Swearing a great oath to defeat and slay the vile warlord, Helbrecht and an entourage of Black Templar brethren began a zealous pursuit of Ghazghkull's flagship in the void. This is where the chapter ends. In this new age of risen Primarchs, chaos and death, Helbrecht's story has only begun.